are watching the Friday edition of Platinum Northwest TV News. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Philadelphia Mangoeng. Let's take a look at the leading top stories. 12 years later and the Marikana Massacre still lives on, and the NPA withdraws charges against 95 Libyans. In the business news, Electricity Minister gives more insight on South Africa's nuclear program, and in the sports news, Netball South Africa has called on President Ramaphosa to keep his promise of building a netball center. We begin here. It was on this day 12 years ago that saw the Marikana Massacre events. Now this emanated from a 6-week wildcat strike at the Lonmin Platinum mine near Rustenburg in the Northwest Province. Here's more.
The massacre occurred on the 7th day of an illegal strike at the mine. Although initial strikers were primarily rock drill operators belonging to the National Union of Mine Workers, the strike action was launched without union endorsement. The strikers sought a sizable wage increase up to at least 12,500 rand monthly. This was to be negotiated outside the existing collective wage agreement. And yet, after 12 years, no accountability for the Marikana perpetrators. Human rights organizations under the newly formed State Capture and Beyond campaign say the fact that there has been no single prosecution 12 years after the massacre is disappointing. Families of miners killed on the day and human rights lawyers say compensation of 71.4 million rand was partially paid in 2018. They have also called for an apology from the President Cyril Ramaphosa.
In other news, the National Prosecuting Authority withdrew charges against the 95 Libyans arrested at an illegal military camp in Mpumalanga. The National Prosecuting Authority said withdrawing a case against 95 Libyans arrested at the illegal military camp was not a reflection of an inability to prosecute crimes. The Director of Public Prosecutions in the province found that there was not enough evidence to prosecute the group. The matter has now been struck off the roll, and the Libyans have been handed over to the Department of Home Affairs pending their deportation. The camp allegedly conducted a military training without proper authorization, casting a shadow of suspicion over the group. Meanwhile, the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority has taken swift action, suspending the security company in light of the recent events. Moving on to international news now, Shinawatra has become Thailand's youngest ever Prime Minister after Parliament confirmed her nomination by the ruling coalition. The 37-year-old, known by her nickname Onying, is the youngest child of billionaire tycoon Thaksin Shinawatra and is third member of the family after her father and aunt to hold the nation's top job. The ruling coalition chose Shinawatra as its replacement at a meeting on Thursday night after none of the 10 other parties in the coalition put forward an alternative. With that, let's take a look now at the business news. In the business news earlier today, Electricity Minister Ramaphosa held a special media briefing in Pretoria where he shared more details on the country's nuclear program. Now, at the briefing, the minister said that they will be withdrawing a government gazette submitted for the acquisition of nuclear energy. This means for now, government will be withdrawing its plans to increase nuclear power in the country. Some civil society organizations have launched an application to review and set aside the 2,500 megawatt new nuclear build determination. In more business news, Exxaro Resources has reported a drop in coal production and sales for the half-year end June 2024. Group revenue declined by 4% to 19 billion rand due to lower export prices, decreased domestic offtakes and increased logistical costs. Net operating profit was down 14%, coming in at 3.7 billion rand. Exxaro declared an interim dividend of 7.96 rand per share, down 30% to the same period last year. And that's all from the business news. Up next, we get the very latest in the sports. In Netball news, Netball South Africa President Cecilia Molokwane has challenged President Cyril Ramaphosa and Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi to keep their promise to build a center for the sports.
I think that Netball Center, we must have a talk, one-on-one talk, with the President of the country, Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa, and the Premier of Gauteng, this province that we're in, Tate Panyaza Lesufi, and have me on that panel, because I want to ask them the same question. Thank you.
So nothing since then, you guys haven't had any more engagements?
I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for them to tell me what's happening. Because I've been asking for meetings and I don't get those meetings. Maybe because of I'm saying it in the media now, I'll get that meeting from the Premier and from the Presidency. Can I have that meeting, please?
Now, during last year's World Cup closing ceremony, which was held in Cape Town, Ramaphosa promised to build an exclusive netball arena that will help develop the sport. Meanwhile, New Spar Proteas netball team captain Khanyisa Chawane says that she's looking forward to the challenge of filling the big shoes left by former skipper Bongiwe Msomi. Chawane was named as the new Proteas team captain yesterday during a press conference in Sandton, where Spar also extended its relationship with another 3-year deal in a multi-million rand sponsorship. Now, Khanyisa Chawane spoke to the media after her presentation and had this to say.
I think moving away a bit from netball is going into high school. When I was 14 years old, we obviously had to choose which sport we wanted to do, and I chose netball. And before I could even start doing anything, my mother passed away. And when she did, I mean, in everybody's mind, you lose hope. You don't know how to move forward. But I had the privilege of my coach in high school, Shamaine Bierke, who took over that role and really helped me within my career, and I was actually able to then be recognized by the University of the Free State to come and play netball there. But without parents, we obviously have difficulties with finances, and having to use my talent to gain myself a bursary at the university and actually be able to continue with my netball was really one of the greatest stories and the greatest challenges that I was able to overcome. But the story that I always say is I've served the University of the Free State, I've served the Free State Crinums.
In boxing news, the South African superstar Dricus du Plessis is set to face Nigerian contender Israel Adesanya at the UFC 305 at the RAC Arena in Perth in a highly anticipated title fight this Sunday. The South African fighter became the middleweight belt holder in January when he beat Sean Strickland in Toronto. UFC overlord Dana White has been long teasing a UFC event on the African soil, and this week he confirmed that a win for Dricus would go a long way to making that a reality. Let's take a look.
Sounds good. Last thing I'll ask you, obviously a big pay-per-view this weekend as well. What can you tell us about the expectations for this title fight, the bitter rivalry finally coming to a close? Early reports of tension down there, I guess. Just what can you tell us about this weekend?
Yeah, I'm sure. Big fight. Every time guys hate each other like this, the fight usually ends up sucking. But I have a really good feeling this one won't. You're talking about, if you look at what Israel Adesanya has achieved in his life, not just here, but in kickboxing too, and Dricus, he brings it, man. He comes, and you have one of these situations where both guys, everything is on the line, especially because they dislike each other so much. And if he can beat Izzy and bring that belt back to South Africa, obviously, we'll do an event there. And if Izzy can retain and win the title, it's huge for him and his legacy. Not retain, but regain.
Meanwhile, du Plessis could be accompanied to the ring on Sunday by Springbok World Cup winners Siya Kolisi and Evan Etzebeth. The Springbok are also currently in Perth, preparing for Saturday's Rugby Championship test against the Wallabies. And that's where we're going to have to wrap it up for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back again on Monday evening. Till then, have a blessed weekend. Good night and take care.